Tuesday, August 13th, 2022, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So today we're going to look at how Napoleon used gold and silver to turn France from a basket case to an empire. And I'm not going to be judging Napoleon or what happened then. It's just that I'm going to try to prove to you the point that whoever has the gold makes the rules, that as the old saying goes. And as I've said many times, I think it's really important to look back at history to see what's going on today and what could happen in the future. And it's interesting that Russia, especially under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, President Putin, has amassed a big reserve of gold, especially since around 2005 and 6. We know that the Chinese as well have been acquiring a lot of gold, even though they're not very transparent about how much they hold. There's a lot of speculation that they hold like 20,000 tons. But yes, maybe those countries have learned the lesson of Napoleon. And I'm going to refer to a book here today that I've recommended to you many times in the past. And for those of you who are new to the channel and haven't heard about this book, I highly recommend it. It's not very long, and I'll provide a free PDF below in the description, a link to a free PDF. You can choose to buy it as well. The book is Fiat Money, Inflation in France, How It Came, What It Brought, and How It Ended by Andrew Dixon White. Basically, it's a story of how revolutionary France was basically bankrupt around 1790, and they had to come up with, they came up with what they thought would be a good idea to issue irredeemable paper money called, or currency called the assignat. Their idea was that an initial issue would help kickstart the economy, and then they could go back to normal. But what happened is that every time they issued assignats, the economy picked up, and then it went down again. So initially they're very reluctant to actually make the first issue, but then they started issuing more and more and more, and they issued another one called the mandats. And by 1796, France was totally bankrupt, on its knees. And interestingly, that was the time when Napoleon started to come into prominence, 1796. And eventually he took charge as the first consul, I think 1799. And he was consul, I think, for 10 years. He became emperor as well, of course. And in the end of this book, though, the author talks about what happened, how France turned around really well under Napoleon, from being a basket case, as I said, to being an empire. Yes, there's that old French saying, le plus ça change, le plus c'est la même chose, or the more things change, the more they become the same. And I think, yes, you will see what I mean. So we're going to go through here. It's actually the last passage of the book. It's on page 67 and it ends on page 68. But this history would be incomplete without a brief sequel showing how that great genius, I guess that's Napoleon, profited by all his experience. When Bonaparte took the consulship, the condition of fiscal affairs was appalling. The government was bankrupt, an immense debt was unpaid. The further collection of taxes seemed impossible. The assessments were in hopeless confusion. War was going on in the East, on the Rhine, and in Italy, and civil war in La Vendée. All the armies had been unpaid, and the largest loan that could, for the moment, be effected was for a sum hardly meeting the expenses of the government for a single day. At the first cabinet, Council Bonaparte was asked what he intended to do. He replied, and I quote, "I will pay cash or pay nothing." So before I continue, cash in those days meant specie, and specie means gold and silver coins. From this time, he conducted all his operations on this basis. He arranged the assessments, funded the debt, and made payments in cash. And from this time, during all the campaigns of Marengo, Austerlitz, Jena, Eylau, Friedland, down to the peace of Tilsit in 1807, there was but one suspension of specie payment, and this was only for a few days. When the first great European coalition was formed against the empire, Napoleon was hard-pressed financially, and it was proposed to resort to paper money, but he wrote to his minister, again I quote Napoleon, "While I live, I will never resort to irredeemable paper," close quotes. Well, that's what we have today, irredeemable. It's just paper that circulates and can only be redeemed really for more paper. He never did, and France, under his determination, commanded all the gold she needed. It's interesting there that the author says France had all the gold it needed, and a few years before it was totally bankrupt. So it just goes to show that if you have credibility and you stick to your word and you say that you won't accept irredeemable paper or fiat currency anymore, creditors will respect you. And I think that shows that nowadays, even if a country doesn't have that much gold and their government is in trouble, i.e. a bit like the UK or Canada, it doesn't mean to say they can't turn around. And I think for countries like Russia and China, yes, they've accumulated a lot of gold, but it won't be of any use until they really just come out and say, we will accept no more irredeemable paper. And I think that's what they're doing right now with the US dollar or the petrodollar, because the petrodollar is an irredeemable paper. So let's continue. When Waterloo came with the invasion of the Allies, with war on her own soil, with a change of dynasty, and with heavy expenses for war and indemnities, France, on a specie basis, experienced no severe financial distress. If we glance at the financial history of France during the Franco-Prussian War and the communist struggle, in which a far more serious pressure was brought upon French finances that our own recent civil war put on American finance, and yet with no national stagnation or distress, but with a steady progress in prosperity, we shall see still more clearly the advantage of meeting a financial crisis in an honest and straightforward way, and by methods sanctioned by the world's most costly experience. Well, that was the costly experience in the 1790s. Rather than yield to the dreamers, theorists, phrasemongers, declaimers, schemers, speculators, or to that sort of reform, which is the last refuge of a scoundrel. There is a lesson in all this which it behooves every thinking man to ponder. So notice how he talked about schemers, speculators. Yes, that's what happened when you try to bring something new, reform the system. Instead of bringing specie back, gold and silver, which have been money for thousands of years. And as I said, the more things change, the more they become the same. All this talk about CBDC and digital currencies and even cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, This is what the author is talking about here: the schemers, the reformers. None of this will work, and eventually we will have to go back on a cash basis or gold and silver, real money. And Napoleon knew that, and he turned France from a basket case to an empire. Yes, of course, eventually he overstretched himself and the empire collapsed. But he couldn't have done it without resorting to sound finances. And just wanted to show before we go and look at the markets. I've had these coins for quite a while. I didn't really pay that much over spot. So they are kind of numismatic, but I think you'll like this. One is 40 francs from 1811, and it says Empire Français, and you've got Napoleon Emperor. There you go. So 40 francs, gold francs. So, and then on the other side, 1811. I think 1812 really, the French Empire was at the height of its power. Of course, from there, from 1812, it went downhill, mainly because Napoleon tried to conquer Russia. This is a good book about that, Napoleon's Fatal March on Moscow by Adam Zamoyski. I recommend it. And as you can see as well, these silver coins from Wikipedia. I don't have Napoleon silver coins. Maybe I should get some. And yeah, so a great lesson, I would say, not just for nations and leaders, but for individuals as well, about how to be independent and maybe even conquer some other countries. Not that I'm pushing for that, of course. So now let's look at where the markets are. I'm going to put my glasses back. My right lens is fog up for some reason when it gets a little hot. So I wanted to read that passage without my glasses on. But now let's look at where the markets are this morning. It's 8:40 a.m. in London. Well, gold and silver are still under pressure. It is a bit frustrating, the movement in the paper price, especially after such a positive close on Friday. I'm not concerned. You've seen historically how things work, right? Those who have the gold and the silver make the rules. And if you don't want to be told what to do, I think you should have a little bit of gold and silver, actually. And I've said that ever since I started this channel in late 2015. So let's continue then to the stock markets. The Dow futures is down 50 points. NASDAQ futures down 50 as well. And the S&P futures down 12. The FTSE is up 22. The Euro Stoxx 50 is up 8 points. To the currencies, sterling is down 0.2% at 120.29. The euro is down 0.2 as well at 101.43. And the dollar is up a third versus the yen at 133.74. Dollar is up 0.25% versus the Swiss franc, 94.81. And the dollar is unchanged versus the yuan at 680. Yeah, about 681 actually. Yeah, the Chinese did cut one of their rates yesterday. Their economy is slowing down. They're doing still a lot of lockdowns. I think that's crazy. And but I think they're ready to maybe stimulate again fiscally. And they've shown that they're ready to do it monetarily by cutting rates. Let's have a look at the dollar versus the ruble. Well, it's unchanged. We're at 61.20, so not much to write home about there. To the other currencies, Aussie dollar is down 0.25%, just above 70. The dollar is up 0.1% versus the Canadian dollar, 129.16. And the Kiwi dollar is down 0.5%. at 63.35. To the general commodities, WTI crude is down 0.8% at 88.26. Brent crude is down 1% at 93.80. High-grade copper, that's down 0.5% at 360. U.S. nat gas is actually up 2% at 8.88. And also the Dutch nat gas future, or the European nat gas, has risen quite sharply here. We are at all-time highs at 230. It's up almost 5%. So no let up in the energy sector for Europe. And we're going to finish off with the U.S. Treasury market and look at the yield curve, the bond market, of course. The 10-year yield is at 280. It's unchanged overnight. And the 2-year yield is at 320. So 40 basis points inversion. So before I sign off, just wanted to touch upon a number that came out yesterday. It's called the New York Empire State Manufacturing Index. And the previous month, it came out at 11.1. It was expected to come out at 5.5, but it came out at minus 31.3. So that's another sign there that the U.S. economy is turning south. And is it any wonder as well that the Chinese economy is turning south? So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And with that, I wish you all a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye.